Hello everyone, this is Team BOA, and our topic today is deindividuation. According to sources, deindividuation is a concept in social psychology defined as the loss of self-awareness and self-restraint occurring in group situations that foster arousal and anonymity. Due to how people frequently clump into groups, deindividuation is usually used in psychology to explain collectivist influences as well as how much a society impacts an individual. Deindividuation is the perceived loss of individuality and personal responsibility that occurs when someone participates as part of a group. There are no shortage of instances in which the phenomenon of deindividuation can be identified in real-world instances. Deindividuation can occur in as varied instances as in the police force, the military, sports teams, gangs, and social organizations. Although they may seem very different on the surface, these groups share many traits that make them vulnerable to deindividuation. For example, police officers and soldiers wear uniforms that create a group identity while eliminating the individual's differences of personal style. All of the examples share the strong drive towards group cohesiveness as a sort of way to foster social solidarity. In alleviating individual variations, these various groups become more cohesive and act more as a unit. The cohesiveness of a group can make its members lose their sense of self in the overarching identity of the group. They may begin to think of themselves as a mere part of the group and lose self-awareness. As a result, people do things that they might usually not do out of shyness, individual morality, self-consciousness, or other factors when de-individualized.
History and overview. One of the most well-known historical applications of deindividuation is that of the Milgram experiment conducted by Stanley Milgram. This experiment starts with the role assignment of teacher and learner. The expectation of the teacher is to ask questions to the learner and the learners to give a response. If the response is correct, they will move directly to the next question. If the response is false, the teacher is instructed to deliver a shock to the learner. Each shock will slowly go stronger and stronger all the way up to the lethal level of electricity. What the teacher does not know is that the learner is actually part of the experiment, is not actually reacting to the shocks, but only mimicking the displayed reactions. The purpose of this experiment is to determine the number of people who would think for themselves or follow direct obedience from an authority role. The deindividuation aspect of this experiment comes from the relation of anonymity and being free of judgment or consequence. The anonymity of this experiment, or free of consequence, comes from the teacher following direct role instructions from the experimentors, just as an individual would follow those role expectations from being a part of a group and would no longer think for themselves. Based on what you have seen so far, what percentage of people tested do you think would continue the shocks all the way to the fatal levels? The results of the test have shown that 65% of the people tested would go all the way to maximum voltage. Although the last experiment may seem pretty unethical to some people, the next experiment is without a doubt one of the most intense and dangerous psychological experiments ever conceived. The Stanford prison experiment by Dr. Philip Zimbardo is perhaps the most controversial experiment in recent history. Much like the Milgram experiment, this one begins with the role assignment of authoritative role and follower role, in this case guards and inmates. The guards were given tools of anonymity, such as reflective glasses and matching uniforms. They were also given tools of authority, such as batons, to keep their control over the inmates. Any attempt of disobedience from the inmates resulted in beatings, lower sanitary conditions, and psychological torture. Based on what you have seen so far, how long do you believe it took for the inmates to exhibit disturbed behaviors? The records of this study show that it took just 36 hours for the inmates to be described as crazy and become prone to fits of rage. Keep in mind that the people playing guards in this situation had no prior history of any of these sort of actions against other people. However unethical this experiment was, it does demonstrate the power de-individuation holds over people given animosity and resources. There have been other variations of experiments trying to explain the phenomenon of de-individuation throughout history. However, these two seem to be the most influential of the time.
Modern examples. One notable modern example would include differences in assault rates during the 2016 presidential election. President Trump was made infamous for his anti-immigrant comments during his campaign. Among his comments include declaring that Mexican immigrants were killers and rapists. He often used nationalistic rhetoric during his rallies and used the words "we" when talking about U.S. citizens and "they" when describing immigrants. Researchers from the University of Pennsylvania decided to calculate the number of physical assaults that occurred after Trump rallies compared to other campaigns. Judging by Trump's interesting rhetoric towards immigrants and other people and political parties in general, how do you think this assault rate was affected? What they found was that when one Trump rally was occurring, 2.3 more assaults would happen at a later night. The researchers asserted that this phenomenon was unique to Trump rallies and did not happen at other candidate rallies. This research empirically proves that the relevance to de-individuation to modern society.